Today I'm installing a French drain in my backyard. Let me show you why. Water just sits here. This water's been sitting here for 2 days now and just makes our garden and backyard gross to walk through. My French drain, or as they say in France, le drain, is gonna run through the low area in my backyard where water holds up during heavy rains. This area gets just nasty and it runs right down the middle of my garden in front of the stairs, and it's just a mess. So a French drain is more than just a pipe in the ground. It's different for a few reasons. The trench is dug out wider, it uses gravel, it uses a specific type of fabric barrier that allows water through but keeps sediments from coming in and clogging up your system. Our French drain is going to drain runoff for the entire area in our backyard, and it's going to be necessary for us to enjoy our garden and backyard more. Fun fact, you can tell it's a French drain because of its bad attitude and its condescending look. France! Okay, let's start with the anatomy of a French drain. Our trench will include a rock layer, corrugated, perforated pipe, and another rock layer, all wrapped up in a special type of landscape fabric. If you think about it, the cross-section of a French drain looks oddly similar to the cross-section of a McDonald's cheeseburger. Inside of the landscape fabric wrapper, you have a drain pipe burger patty surrounded by 2 rock layer buns. Delicious. Okay, so for digging the trench, there's a few things to consider. I'm gonna want a trench that's about 10 inches wide and about 10 to 12 inches deep. Additionally, you're gonna wanna make sure, of course, that water is moving away from your house. I know it's common sense, but you're gonna wanna run this thing from a higher elevation to a lower elevation because water will, of course, follow gravity. To do this well requires at least a 1% grade or fall, which is about an inch every 10 feet, minimum. More is better. Water is drawn by gravity. I have my trench location picked out in the lowest area of the backyard, and it looks like it's on a constant downhill slope for the entire 60 feet. But I need to make sure. Luckily, my dad, Mancycle Sr., happens to own an old school surveying transit. Check this thing out. We set up our transit and shoot our elevation every 10 feet or so to see what the natural slope of the land is. It's actually pretty fun to use this thing. With my dad's help, we determined that the drop over our 60-foot run is about 30 inches, which is about a 4% downward slope, which is great. If you have areas without any slope or an upward slope, you'll have to make that difference up in your trench by digging deeper. I peel up the existing landscape fabric in the garden and grab my shovel to begin trenching. And I'm not alone. My buddy Jeff Sawyer and my handy-dandy father-in-law Jay helped me trench this whole thing out. Trenching through the garden area is pretty straightforward as there's no grass here. Just dirt that's been covered with weed barrier. So it goes quick, but it is labor intensive. For the last 30 feet of my trench, I actually have to work through some grass. So I experiment a bit and I try out my flat shovel, an axe, and a reciprocating saw on this part. I'll link a video in the video description about using those tools and which one worked the best that you can check out later. So I get through the sod. Now I'm digging out and carting off the soil because it's not going back in the trench. The dirt would just slow the drainage down, offering another barrier for water to percolate through, so it's out. Now the trench is ready to rock. Cuisson? Merci. Now to install our materials, the first thing that gets laid down is my fabric. This is a special type of fabric called geotextile fabric that I'm using, and it's a little different than good old-fashioned weed barrier. Geotextile fabric basically has much smaller openings than traditional weed barrier, and so it's going to allow the water to move through, but not the sediments. The sediments that come with the runoff can't penetrate. So this stuff really prevents sediment buildup inside of the French drain itself, and will extend the life of your system. My friends at Vevor sent me this geotextile fabric, and I'll link it in the description in case you need it. I'm using 3-foot wide fabric and centering it on the trench. I decided to use some landscape staples to pin down the edges of this stuff just to make sure it stays open while I install the rock. Okay, next comes the rock. I'm using 1-inch creek rock because that's what I have on hand. I had a butt ton of it delivered for another landscaping project, and I've got plenty left over. So a butt ton is basically 15 metric tons with a crack down the middle. I install a 2 to 3 inch layer of rock on the fabric for the length of the trench. Okay, I'm getting ready to install my pipe and I want to show you this. A French drain needs to have a guaranteed opening or void through which water can travel. And that's the point of the pipe. The pipe is that empty space. Now, I'm using a corrugated perforated pipe for this, which means it has holes in it. Now, this can be pretty counterintuitive because you would think that the holes would let the water out of the system. Well, these holes are actually going to let water in. During rains, water will move into the trench, through the fabric, and start moving along with the grade, between the rocks, and also through the void in this pipe. The pipe just offers a guaranteed path of travel for the water. Now, you could absolutely use PVC for a heavier duty system. I've opted for corrugated pipe, which is cost effective and easier to transport. This particular pipe was $0. My stepdad, Fred, has his own secret materials supply deep in his backyard, and he gifted me this roll of pipe for the project. I love how cost effective free is.
Free is like the lowest price ever.
The pipe goes in right on top of the gravel layer. Literally the easiest part of the project. And hey, real quick, if you're receiving any value from this content, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a big thumbs up. It really does help the channel. After the pipe is laying flat, I test the drain just to make sure everything is running as it should. Next, I man-cycle myself a 2 to 3 inch layer of that creek rock and install it over the top of the drain pipe. Next, I go ahead and install a pop-up drain emitter at the end of my pipe run. Now, excess water has an easy escape route. Then I wrap the Geotextile fabric over on itself and use landscape staples to permanently fix it in place. To finish it off, I'm adding rock over the drain area in my garden and returning the sod to the area in my yard. And it sits back in place nicely. To make sure the sod survives the process, be sure to thoroughly hose it down and give those roots a chance to stabilize in their new home. From here, if you'd like to see how I ran my guttering system under the sidewalk to connect to this French drain, I've got a video you can check out right here. And if after seeing this video you feel like I've earned your subscription, you can click the Man Cycle logo right here. See you next time.